You got to hear someone when they're at the very bottom and how they get to the very top. That journey is the most important thing. What's going on, everybody? This is Chris Naugle, and welcome back to the Money School podcast, where we talk about, yeah, you guessed it, money. But this is also a podcast where we bring exceptional human beings on that are doing unbelievable things. And today's guest is somebody that I've known for quite a long time, but not known personally. Folks, how many times have you ever known somebody, but you don't know them, right? In today's world of digital and social media, you sometimes feel like you know people. You know, it's a proximity thing. Well, me and Brent have been in the same circles for years and years and years, but we've never really came together till just now. So I am so excited to interview him, so excited to talk about his company. But let me just give you a little bit of insight on this guest. So he didn't come from money, and he had some really hard times in 2008. And I want to focus on that. I want to focus on his journey and his story, because if you understand that, it will give you the courage. If you're going through hard times, if you know someone going through hard times, you got to hear someone when they're at the very bottom and how they get to the very top. That journey is the most important thing. And that's really what I want to get today. So my guest's name, you probably have heard of him, Brent Daniels. Company is TTP, Talk to People. Brilliant, right? He runs a company called Wholesaling Inc. You probably have heard of that too. He basically works with folks, teaching them how to wholesale, an unbelievable business. But Brent, thanks for joining me today.
Chris, why have you been hiding from me for so long? I swear.
Dude, it's so crazy. I'm always walking through the masterminds. I'm like, who's that dude, man? Did he just come from the gym? Because you've been working out, man. But it's so funny. I know exactly who you are. I see you at every single mastermind we're at. And it's just like, it's just never been that moment where we've just kind of connected. It's wild.
Well, this is an honor, and I'm excited to speak to your audience and speak with you. And listen, you're the money guy. I mean, we just had a great conversation before this podcast started. So I'm really, really, really excited.
Well, I'm excited too, because what you do and how you develop your students is just phenomenal. But before we get into Wholesaling Inc. and TTP and all the things you're doing, let's take them back on the journey ride back. Let's go back to like the hard times, the Great Recession. Isn't it? We were talking earlier. We're getting a little older, man. The fact that like we lived through that and suffered through that. A lot of the folks that we talk to nowadays just realize like that they were just kids during that. They don't even know the impact of the Great Recession, but we sure do. So let's just start there and kind of what happened. And then how did you come out of that and have the courage and the tenacity to get where you're at now? Because you were just wiped out.
Yeah, it's funny even talking about it, right? Because now we're the old guys that are talking about this terrible event that happened in 2008, and all the young people are like, "Stop talking about this! Stop talking about it!" But it's so critical that people understand this, because I didn't realize it. Right? There was, in the 80s, that was kind of like the savings and loan stuff were kind of going on, and there was some financial issues, but I didn't know anything about that. You know what I mean? My parents would talk about it. They'd be more conservative. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. The world is wide open. It's all new. But the fact is, these things cycle. So when you hear some of the principles that we're going to talk about, that Chris certainly talks about all the time, it's important to really anchor in and understand the economy does not just go straight up all the time. And you're not just going to be making the same amount or more every single year, year in, year out, doing it all the time. These things ebb and flow, and you have to really build skills. And that's the problem that I had, Chris, is I was relying on the tailwind, or at least the wind was in my sails, pushing me forward early on in my 20s in my real estate career. It was a great economy. People were buying and selling a lot of properties in Phoenix, Arizona, and I just didn't. I didn't build the skills that were required to be really, really, really good as a real estate entrepreneur, and so that's what got me. What got me was I thought that I could delegate everything and I could just use money to buy people's time and their experience, but I wasn't developing it myself. And when everything fell apart, I didn't have the skills to be able to keep up with everything. And I lost everything. I foreclosed on 5 properties. I had 2 cars repoed. I had a 400 credit score. I had a ton of bank, the business credit cards that we just didn't pay on. It just went to collections, and it just turned into a nightmare. And it was just simple what I had to what I had to be able to do to get out of that and to really protect myself in the future was to build real skills of effective communication with property owners and just realize that in real estate, if you have enough quality conversations and make enough offers on properties, you will win. Good market, bad market, side market, flat market, doesn't matter. But I just didn't realize that at the time. I was very I was full of ego.
Ego will get you every single time. And I want to also just kind of talk a little bit right now when you're hitting 2008 and all those things. I think it brings up a quote, that Will Rogers said, and I say it often, and I think it's just so relevant for today. Will Rogers says the biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. He says the biggest problem in America is what people think that they know that just ain't so. So sure. I want to transition this story based on that Will Rogers quote into kind of why I think it's so valuable in what you teach and what you do with your companies for people to listen to you. They might say, oh, that'll never happen again. They fixed all that stuff.
Sure.
Listen, one thing that is certain is we've been in the longest bull run in history. So the younger folks today, a lot of you listening, you got to understand you've never seen hard times. You've never felt the impact of a recession, and there's one coming, folks. There's a downturn coming, and it's in the air. It's kind of like right before a storm hits. You can just sense it. You can just smell it. You can feel it. Well, it's there. So working with someone that has been through that has lost everything through that, I will promise you that person, Brent, knows how not to ever do that again. So don't you think that'd be a good person to learn from? But now let's transition back into your story. You found wholesaling. Can you just talk a little bit about how did this appear? Because you were mostly just a real estate agent buying some properties, just thinking your shit didn't stink and that you were just the king tut because the market had, put a tailwind or put a wind in your sails. So you just thought nothing would go wrong until you lost it all.
Yeah. It's when you don't have money for marketing, and you don't have a tremendous amount of referrals coming in, you have to be proactive, right? There's only 3 ways to get leads, right? You can wait for referrals. You can build up a nice referral database of people that know, like, and trust you, and they send you business. You can buy business through marketing, right? You literally buy people that are going to reach out to you and say, hey, listen, I'm interested in what you have to offer. Or you can be proactive and go out and earn it. Right? You can go out and knock doors, make calls, and maybe some text messages, but that's about it. It's just opening up, being super proactive to reaching out to people every single day and initiating conversations. It's interrupting their day. And there's a tremendous amount of rejection. And there's that part of our brain, Chris, that is very afraid of getting kicked out of the tribe. Right? And so we're very okay, I can't deal with a lot of rejection, because I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to feel like I'm going to be ostracized. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to not really, push the boundaries of trying to talk to too many strangers because it's going to be rejection. It's going to be bad. Well, the beautiful thing about being at rock bottom is it's a strong foundation, and you get to find out a lot about yourself, and you get to try things that you didn't think that you had enough courage to try. Because nobody out there is just going to give you money to live the lifestyle that you want. You have to go take it. You have to go earn it. You have to go out there and actually provide value to the marketplace. So, I didn't have any money. I didn't have money for marketing, but I had legs and I had a decent attitude, and I went out and just started knocking on doors. And I knocked a whole area in Phoenix called Arcadia, where it's an older neighborhood with smaller houses on bigger lots. You saw the developers and the builders coming in and the investors coming in and adding on to those houses or knocking them down and building bigger houses because it's a very popular area. So I figured, hey, listen, if I could go find a house that somebody wants to sell, match it up with my investor buyers that I know, then they'll pay me a commission and life's good. So I would knock her all day long. I would just go out and knock on doors. And I remember I came to the end of a street on 42nd Place, right here by my office. And I talked to a gal. She had She had the screen door, like a security door open, and her door cracked. So I knocked on the security door. She came out a little, hesitant. And I had a good conversation with her, and I just asked her if she would consider an offer on her property. She said no. She loves the neighborhood, the whole thing, but the house 4 houses down is vacant, and the owner wants to sell it. They live in New York. Let me get, and then she went in and called the owner to get permission for me to reach out. And I called up the owner. And that's when I realized, Chris, if I have a name, address, and phone number of somebody that wants to sell their house, I never have to worry about making income again. I am telling you, all I need is a name, address, and phone number of a property that needs significant investment, significant rehab, significant updating. And if I talk to enough of those people, I will find people that want to sell their property, and I can match that up with investors. And at the time, I just wanted a 3% commission. Well, I go to the closing statement of that deal, and my buyer, my investor, isn't anywhere to be found. They're not in the closing statement. Some other company's on it. But then I look down at the very, very, very bottom in the little fine print, and it has my investor's name, and next to it says assignment fee, $30,000.
Oh,
and I was like, so are you going to buy this property, Derek? And he's like, oh, no, I already sold it. And I go, how do you sell a property you don't own? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. A buddy of mine wanted the property, so I sold it to him. And so he's paying me. So no big deal. You're still getting your commission. And so I did that 3 times for $92,000 total. And then I figured out, wait a second. Like, I can be the buyer. I can be the buyer on this deal. I can assign my rights to the purchase contract to somebody else, and I could be the one making the 30,000. That's when everything clicked, and that's when everything started going bananas. And then I just was on fire. I was calling all day, finding opportunities, locking them up, selling them to investors, building up a big network of people that I could sell these opportunities to. And it afforded me to pay off debts at the time. This is the other thing, Chris, as a silly 26-year-old, I signed a personal guarantee on 9,000 square foot office space for a 10-year lease, 9,000 square foot office space in North Scottsdale. Right.
Oh, man.
Well, I signed that January 2008. October 2008, the economic world melted. And so we got sued. That's the interesting thing about if you don't, pay a lease and you have a personal guarantee, they sue you. So I'm 27 years old. I got a $742,000 judgment against me. And I have to go into their attorneys every 6 months to show them that I didn't have anything that they could take from me. And then wholesaling was the thing that helped me claw out of that. So anybody listening to this, if you're at like broke, great. That's not even close to where I was. I was in a hole like $800,000. And my dad gave me his old car, and that got beat up in a hailstorm. So I was driving around with tape and plastic bags on the window. And it was just a rite of passage. It was just a reset. I was always told I could do everything that I wanted growing up. And I had that belief, and I had that ego, and I had that confidence. And you really find out who you are when you really get smacked, when you really lose it all. And then that's when I realized if I just talk to people every single day, and that became a mantra. And so the TTP mantra came around, and I realized name, address, and phone number. Give me that and I'm set. And then you build skills around effectively communicating with those property owners. And that's what's grown, that's what's grown my business and allowed me to be on your show.
No, man, I love that story. That's phenomenal.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action like so many others have by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
There's a couple things there that you did to kind of get yourself out of that. And that is good old hard work. And in today, my gosh, since the pandemic, it just doesn't seem like people want to go out there and do that hard work. So is there, in today's technology world, is there an easier path? Is there a way to get that name, number, and
Sure.
address easier than it was back when you were just going around knocking on doors. Cause like, I know that's a effective strategy, but if I were going out there preaching to everybody saying, hey, this is all you got to do to become a millionaire, just go around, knock on doors. They're going to be like, no. So there's got to be an easier way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, you could pick up the phone and just call them. You know what I mean? You could go driving around. Anybody right now could go out in their community and find the 100 ugliest properties they can find. And online, you could go anywhere. You could go to True People Search. You could go to People Finder. You could go to cyberbackgroundchecks.com. You could go anywhere, plug in an address, and get all the phone numbers you want for all those property owners. You could just call them up and ask them if they would consider an offer on their property. And it's just a numbers game from that point. There's so many lists that you can pull from different technology, from different websites. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. But the fact is, the U.S. Census in 2020 came out and they said 6 to 10% of the real estate market's in distress at all times. All right. And so it's like if 6 to 10, there's 143 million properties, Chris. There's 143 million residential properties. It means there's upwards of 14 million properties. Let's call it 10 million properties. There's 10 million properties of people that have some sort of either the property's in distress just physically, it's financially in distress, they just can't afford it anymore, or there's emotional distress. So there's three main buckets of that distress. And if you focus your efforts on solving the problems of those property owners, you're going to be wildly rewarded. And so there's so many tools available for you to be able to pull those.
The one thing I was actually kind of getting at is because people don't want to do the hard work, they just want the easy button now.
No, well, there is none.
Well,
there is none,
thank you. That's what I was looking for you to say. There is no
you gotta
easy
talk to people.
button. You got to talk to people. But here's the thing. Because everybody else is lazy, because so many other people, we'll call them the 95%ers on this, because you all hear me talk about the 5 and the 95. The 95%ers don't want to do the hard work. You know what that does, folks? That gives you an opportunity to do just a little bit more, put just a little bit more effort in, and you will be wildly successful. I don't know if this environment's going to exist in the future. I just don't. We've been in good, like easy times for too long where people have gotten complacent, but it's those that are just willing to do that extra work. Pick the phone up, dial the call, talk to people, solve their problems. You can easily climb and cut through to become very successful in a very short period of time, but you got to be willing to put the time in. I mean, I love Brent, your story was so good because it was that. It was the kicking and screaming and just clawing your way there. And you got addicted to it because you were just like, this is awesome. And you just kept going. And now you teach people how to do this, which, let's just kind of put a pin in that story. Some of my audience, and I don't want to say many of them, but some of my audience might not even understand what wholesaling is. Can you just give just a real quick synopsis of what a traditional wholesaling deal is?
Well, listen, wholesale, in my opinion, is just the art of finding discounted properties. And when you find those properties, you put them under contract, right? And the interesting thing is when you have a purchase agreement signed by you and a property owner, you instantly have an asset. You have the exclusive right to purchase that property with those terms. There is a big market of people that want that deal. There's a high demand for that opportunity. And so what you do is you can either close on that deal yourself and flip that property. You can close on it, fix it up, put it into your rental portfolio. Or what you can do is you can assign your right to purchase that property. So you, and the average fee for that across the country is $15,000. So you get a property that's fixed up worth 200, you lock it up for 80, you sell it to an investor for 90, they put 40,000 into it to flip it, they make the profit there. That's what we're talking about. So that's the simplest form. Basically, you're matching up a ugly house with an investor that wants to invest in that community. Because the fact is, people that sell properties to us, they want speed and convenience. And every property owner has to decide what they want. And you have three main factors: speed, convenience, and price. If you want, and you can only have two, you can only get two as a seller. You can't have all three of them, right? You get speed, convenience, and price. And so if you want the highest price, then you're going to have to put it on the market. You have to be inconvenienced by fixing it all up and disclosing everything that's ever happened to the property and going through appraisals and putting your dogs away while they're showings and, making all the repairs during the inspection and all these things. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is people that go, you know what? I don't want to do anything to this. I just inherited this property. It's in original condition. I'm not going to fix it up. I want to just sell it cash as is right now. Who will give me the best price? Boom. That's it. That's it. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at people that want to trade price for speed and convenience. And that's not everybody. That's not most sellers, but 6 to 10% is.
And it's just finding that golden nugget. But
that's it.
The other thing too with wholesaling, and you kind of already hit this, but I want to just reiterate this, is wholesaling is a great way for a real estate investor or someone thinking about getting into real estate because you don't need a ton of money. If you're going to start in real estate, like you can become a realtor. I mean, you still need some money to pay for all the licensing and all that. You can, get into it and start flipping, but you're going to need some capital. Even in today's world, you definitely are going to need some capital. Even if you use private money club, you're still going to probably need a little bit. Then there's the rental game, the development game, all those you're going to need money. But then there's wholesaling. And, I've heard this talked about a lot, and I haven't heard you so much say it, but like a lot of people say you can wholesale and you don't need any money to do it. Can you talk just a little bit about your take on that statement?
Yeah, I disagree a little bit with that. Yes, you don't need to be able to it's for the most part, if you have a good inspection period, if you understand that you need to sell your right to that agreement during your inspection period, there's little to no risk. That's really what you're talking about here is the risk factor, which really helps out a lot of people. But here's the thing. I believe that you need to be the actual buyer. When you put yourself on the contract to be a buyer, you need to have the ability to buy that property. Now, the beautiful thing about our industry is there's something called transactional funding, right? Transactional funding is they'll fund 100% of that purchase as long as you've already got that thing sold and it's just sitting there ready to go, right? So that makes you the buyer. Right. That makes you in actual, you have the ability to purchase that property. Because if you don't, just tell them that you want to wholesale it. You're not going to actually buy this property. You don't have the ability to buy that property. Don't lie to people. Right. But if you get transactional funding, you don't have to. So you just talk to a transactional funder, and I'm sure you've got like a bazillion of them, Chris, that you can refer. And they're there to back you up. There's more money, and you just said this before. There's more money than there are deals. Yep. There's more money than there are deals. So you already have the bank. The industry is really set up for us to find great opportunities. So the money should not be the problem there. You should have the confidence that you can purchase that property 100%. So now you're the buyer in that deal, and but you have to build that relationship with a lender for sure, 100%. Because then you're going to have imposter syndrome and you're just going to never do anything because you're like, oh, I only have $14 in my account. How am I offering $150,000 for this property? Cash. Yep.
You have tons and tons of students throughout the U.S. What are the biggest challenges you're seeing right now in this environment with your students?
It's really focus. My thought is, Chris, take your first year and wholesale everything, and then start have that resume that says, hey, listen, I found 8 great deals. I sold it to these guys. Look at what they made. It looks better when you're raising funds, when you're going to your website to be able to match up with great lenders. But take the first year and just wholesale everything. Just understand how to find really great deals. Learn how to hunt, right? What I see is people go, oh, I did this deal and then I went and bought this rental and then I didn't do any more deals. Yep. Or I did some deals and then I went and did a flip and that flip distracted me they're all different businesses. And I don't care what you want to do. This is just my opinion. If you're going to start with wholesaling, just wholesale. That's its own business. If you're going to flip, that's its own business. Owning a rental portfolio is its own business. If you try to start 3 businesses at once and you're a new budding, entrepreneur, it's going to be very difficult to really take it to the next level. So whatever you want to do, focus on whatever strategy it is. Doesn't matter. Your life is yours. Do what you do, but just focus on one strategy until you really master it.
I think that's great advice. It's like that Family Guy episode where he's going around, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy. That's a lot of real estate investors are just like, ooh, this looks cool. I'll do that too. Ooh, I'll do this. And then they don't do anything well. So get really good at one thing. When you master that, you've got systems and processes in place where you don't need to be there. Then you can open up the next lane and then venture down that. That's the best way. So I love that you said focus. So how would people learn more about what you do with Wholesaling Inc. and TTP?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We put, just like you, we put a lot of love into our YouTube channel, just Brent Daniels on YouTube. I go live on there and answer a bunch of questions and have a really great, fun show every Wednesday. I get to do a show called Wholesale Hotline every Monday with Jerry Norton, Jamil Damji, and Pace Morby, right? They're like on the Mount Rushmore. And so it's just a really, really, really great time. And we put a lot of attention and a lot of instruction. I think that's the most important thing, Chris. And I think it's something that you really lean on as well with your content is education's great. Entertainment's fun, but to get paid, you need instruction. You need people to tell you this is what to do. Go do it. You know what I mean? Just go do this. Just follow this recipe. You know what I mean? It's not like, here's the recipe, but let me explain how, brown sugar's made and where these eggs came from and all this. It doesn't matter. Just follow the recipe. You know what I mean? Yep. And so I always say that. And I always think it's interesting when you see people on stage or you listen to a podcast or you listen to or watch YouTube, you gotta put it through the filter. Is this education? Is this entertainment? Or is this instruction? And you got to pull out the instruction so that you know what to go and to take massive imperfect action. And that's how you win.
That's great. So as we kind of get to the end of this, I got to know one thing. What's in the future for you? Like, what are your next steps?
Be in the bank, bro. That's it. Listen, you inspire, and listen, this isn't just to play to you here. It is, guys, I am telling you, the top of the pyramid when it comes to real estate entrepreneurship is be in the bank. The banks always win. The banks have the most assets. They survive the longest. They have the best lifestyle. I am telling you, the lenders in my life, in my industry, in Phoenix, in Arizona, nationwide that I know have the most incredible lifestyles. They're not worried about their tenants. They're not worried about fixing toilets, all of them. And it's really interesting because it kind of echoes your story, Chris. A lot of them, what they did, they went out, they did a great job for like 10, 12 years. They built a portfolio of 50, 100, 150 properties. They got it to the point where they're like 50, 60% equity. They sold them all. It was like almost like exiting out of a big company that you created, right? You know what I mean? You had that, they have the big exit. They have those millions of dollars sitting there and they're like, okay, now I'm going to lend. And now that's their retirement. That's their lifestyle. That's what they're passing on to their kids. That's what can you imagine passing on a bank to your kids?
Dude, that's what I teach. I totally can. And that's what I'm teaching my 4-year-old right now. And apologize, folks. I am literally losing my voice now. We're real close. But
I think it's real important, Chris, that you are losing your voice because this is really important. I am telling you, when you're really starting out, you got to talk to as many prospects as possible for whatever business you have, with whatever industry you're at. You have to talk to as many as possible. You got to be on the phone all day long. But guess what? You're still all day. The highest performers that I know, Chris, and you can tell me your experience, the people that make the most, that have the most impact, they are talking all day long. It's just different. Now they're talking on YouTube or they're talking on podcasts or they're talking to people that have, a huge, vast amount of wealth and they're talking to their friends all the time. They're just always on the phone or always on some sort of microphone. I'm just telling you, they're just talking all the time. And it doesn't have to be bombastic like I'm being or wildly enthusiastic. It could be just monotone, but they just talk and talk and talk and talk. Even the most analytical engineer brains, once they get going, you'll never get them off the phone. They'll just keep going and going and going. And so what I'm saying is, if you're a budding, new, young, rookie entrepreneur and you're getting going, just be on the phone all day long. Just use that thing. Do not be scared. If there's a day that you're not talking to somebody new, it is a wasted day. And remember, exhaustion is the greatest pillow. So just gas out all day long. Talk to as many people. Build your endurance for more conversations and saying more words and being more interested and curious. And I'm telling you, if you have confidence and you're kind and you're curious, you will do anything you want as an entrepreneur.
Wow. Folks, there's nothing I can add to that. And I would actually say that's it. That's all for my voice. So we are going to end this episode right there. In the description, I'm going to put Brent's information so you can learn about Wholesaling Inc. You can learn about TTP and you can get around his campfire. Make sure you book it in your calendar to get on his show, the Wholesaling Hotline. It's wildly funny and wildly educational. But hey, listen, don't take that from me. Just get on it. Check it out. It's a wild bunch of guys doing some really big things, and you need to get around that campfire. So with that being said, folks, thanks for joining me for another episode of Money School Podcast. Brent, thanks for joining me. It was awesome.
Thanks, Chris.